Welcome to Battle Squadron indeed. This is a 1989 shoot 'em up for the good old Commodore Amiga. It's a top-view shoot 'em up in the style of games such as Fire Shark, Tiger Heli, or Twin Cobra, all games from Toplin. This game here is made by Innerprise. It's the NTSC North American release of Battle Squadron. And in 1989, it's coming before other games that ripped off Toplin, such as the well-known Raiden. These games are usually known as Raiden-likes because Raiden was so popular, but actually it was Toplin who originated this style of play. And once we get into the game, you'll really see what I mean. You know, Toplin games were the ones where, they're top-view scrolling and you collected these color-coded power-ups where collecting more than one of the same color powers that weapon up, and collecting a different color switches weapons. It came to be a pretty worn out formula, but in 1989 it was still pretty fresh. And this actually may have been the first game that I played that had those elements. And of course, like most shooters, this game has a really deep plot where your pilots Cindy Crawford and Gary Sinise, drawn at whatever angles the artist could find, that they could trace, blast off and blow up all kinds of stuff. Oh, come on, this plot's at least as interesting as the last Transformers movie, right? You gotta give it that. And do I need to mention the soundtrack? I mean, that solo is amazingly badass. Really good music in this game. The game starts with you flying through the atmosphere of the planet, armed with only a pea shooter. Fortunately, the game lets you power up rather quickly. What you want to do first is destroy those squadrons and get a couple extra bombs. And you're going to want to use that first bomb you got to destroy the weapons carrier over here, because otherwise it takes way too many hits. And once you get your weapons to a decent level, that's no longer going to be an issue. Yeah, the weapons carrier that takes a bunch of hits and the medals that you collect are two other elements of Toplin shoot-'em-up games that were widely copied. But like I said, it was all new to me back then, and so this game completely blew my mind. For the time, it had such rich graphics, the sound effects were just room-shaking, the music was blazing, and the gameplay relentless. Even though I hung out at arcades quite a bit back then, I had never really seen anything quite like Battle Squadron at home. Amiga games like this were also a really stark contrast next to the 8-bit consoles of the time. The Amiga, of course, is much more expensive, so it's not, a really great comparison, but it was a really interesting time because you'd be playing, say, 1943 on a NES, and then you'd boot this up, and this was like a glimpse into what the next generation of consoles would be like. And of course, then you'd go to the arcade, and sometimes arcade machines were 2 generations ahead. So yeah, put into the context of the time, Battle Squadron was very impressive in 1989. It also has a really interesting level structure that I haven't seen done much anywhere else, so I'm on the overworld map right now. However, at certain junctions, it offers the player the chance to go deeper into the planet's core. And this is like in an RPG where you find dungeons and you go into them, and this is where you fight bosses and you have to conquer all the inner core levels to beat the game. Now, there aren't any really great shot patterns in Battle Squadron. You might be looking at the sub-boss and yeah, they just kind of shoot spam at you. It's not like Raiden or even the Toplin games that have some really clever design to them, spiral patterns and that kind of stuff. So while the game has some really cool enemy patterns, the shot patterns specifically are really nothing to write home about. The game also has some other irksome flaws. For instance, the hitbox is actually quite big, It's not the kind of hitbox where there's a bunch of blank space that can be hit, but it's also not a game where you can really skim shots and have all kinds of close calls, which does take some of the fun out of the shoot 'em up formula. One other thing that does bug me quite a bit about Battle Squadron is the power-up model. Now, it's pretty much what you'd expect from a shoot 'em up from this time period, and even later games such as Darius Gaiden have this exact same flaw, and that is, if you die a few times in a row or don't power up well or miss power-ups, you get pretty hosed in the later levels. So if you've played the aforementioned games and you are fine with it there, then you'll be fine with it in Battle Squadron as well, because it's certainly no worse than it is in those games. One easy thing they could have done is make it so that even if you grab a different color, you still power up, because the way it is here is actually a disincentive to switching and trying out new weapons. And that's a shame, because the different weapons are really fun to use. There's a the wavy shot, that's the default. There's a blue shot that fires forwards and back if you power it up enough. The green shot is a really funky rapid fire pattern, and then of course you've got the spread shot in red, which is not very powerful. But it does hit a lot of the stuff on the screen and is deadly in 2-player mode. And here it is in 2-player glory. This is from the attract mode because I didn't have another player around, but it's a good demonstration of the kind of screen covering firepower you get in 2-player mode. And I should mention that Battle Squadron runs great. It goes at 60 frames a second with no slowdown anywhere in sight. If for some crazy reason you don't have an Amiga, you can actually get Battle Squadron for your iPhone, iPad, or Android device, and it is by the original authors too. It actually controls quite well on the touchscreen with auto-fire and one-to-one shift finger movement. It controls more or less like the cave ports such as Dodonpachi if you've played those. And if you have a tablet, it apparently lets you play 2 players on the same device, though I've never actually tried that mode. The other option for playing Battle Squadron is the Genesis version, which I really think is a rather poor port that completely messes up the game balance and adds unneeded parallax that obscures your view in parts like this. Very disappointing port. Even the music's not that great, even though it's done by Rob Hubbard. Disappointing all around. So if you're gonna get Battle Squadron, get the Amiga one or get the iOS version or Android version. Worth mentioning too is that I don't believe the PAL version of Battle Squadron will run on an NTSC Amiga unless you force it into 50 Hz mode. I mentioned this just because some Amigas can't be forced into 50 Hz easily, and I don't know what the import version of Battle Squadron will do on a 60 Hz NTSC Amiga 500, for instance. So there you go, that's Battle Squadron, a game that was in 1989 one of the best shoot 'em ups you could get at home, and today it remains a very fun game, especially with 2 players. Okay, well, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.